Hey there, I'm Dalton from Deep Wells Media, and we are a production company that is helping you inspire your audience and engage their emotions through the use of video. So today we are talking about editing your videos. So we're going to go through and I'm going to show you the exact processes that I use when I edit videos here at Deep Wells Media for our clients. And so since we're going to be talking about editing, let's jump into the computer and let's get started. Alright, so first thing you're going to want to do when you're making your videos is find good music. Here at Deep Wells Media, we use Epidemic Sound. There are other good platforms out there, but this is just the one that we like to use. So within Epidemic Sound, I'm going to try and find music that really suits the mood of my video. So moods is a good place to start here. You can go for dreamy or epic, happy. Kind of what I like to do is find instrumental music, which you can even filter through. So if you go to the vocals filter here and then click instrumentals, it'll be sure that you don't get anything that has a vocal in it. So as we're searching, what I'll usually do is if I know I have a certain length of video in mind, I will limit it. So say if I have a 2.5 minute requirement, I will limit it to that. If I find a genre that I like, maybe I want something ambient, or build is a really good one. That's a really good keyword to find something that will hopefully build as it goes. And then with those duration tags, you know that it won't be too long, that you don't get stuck having to have the biggest part right at the very end, which might be kind of weird because you want it to resolve a little more peacefully. Okay, so here we are, and I have found a song that I like called Not Yet the End by August Wilhelmsson. And so from here, I'm just going to download it. And the cool thing about Epidemic Sound is that you can download just stems. So if you just want the melody, or if you just want instruments or the bass or the drums, that's what this one has. You can download all of the stems and then separate out what you don't want. So maybe you just don't like the bass line, or you just don't like the drums, they're a little too much. You can cut those out and just have like the strings or the ambient sound that you want. So I'm going to download this, and then we're going to hop into Premiere and start assembling our video. Okay, so here we are in Premiere, and now the first thing that I do is I will usually try to organize my footage a little bit, and so I will make a new sequence. If you don't know how to do that, just go down here to New Item, click Sequence, and then you can follow the steps on that to select what your video resolution is and those kind of things. So what I'll do is I will make a new sequence, I'll name it Interviews, and then I will go into my footage, and then I'll find all of my interviews, and I will drag them onto this timeline, just so that I can have everything in one spot. This is my kind of like sandbox scratch paper area where I will go through this entire thing, through this entire footage, and watch all 22 minutes. This is 4K, that's why he's so zoomed in. But I will watch all of that and pick out just the best parts and then cut it all up, and then I will bring it into my real timeline so that I can assemble it there. So first, I like to go through all of the footage, but really what I'm looking for here is audio, because I'm going to always assemble the audio of my videos first. So a lot of times what I'll do is I will just toggle track output so that I don't have to even see it. Sometimes it's easier if you're editing 4K video and it just gets a little jumpy if you're not using what's called proxy files. So I will go through and I will listen to the entire thing, and then I will pick out all the good parts, all the good sentences even. So I can zoom in and I can press play, and I will listen, I will pause, I'll press C, and then I will hit cut. I will move forward to the end of that section, hit cut again. I use the keyboard shortcut V to go back to the selector. If not, the cut tool, the razor tool is here where I pressed C, and then the selection tool V is right here. So then what I'll do is I will just cut out the section that I want, and then I will just raise it up to the second video track, and then I'll just keep going. Some helpful keyboard shortcuts here are L and J. So if I press play,
in last September, it's only been a year.
Speed it up.
Last September, we decided to
and then I can press J to slow it back down,
and see what God was going to do.
And then eventually, if I keep pressing J, it'll go backwards. If I keep pressing L, it'll speed up more.
Who are those couples?
The name of the couples were Ty and Hay Jones.
So I will go through and I will find all of the good spots, and then I will raise up the tracks, and then once I have all of those, I will bring them into my other timeline. So let me go and grab a couple clips, and then we'll bring them into a new sequence. Okay, so I would typically go through and get more clips than this, but here are just a few. So I will highlight, and I can just drag and just grab just the top. And since the audio is linked already, then I can just drag it over. So I'm going to make a new sequence. We'll call it Peru video. So we have a new sequence, and then we're just going to drag and drop all of those clips over into the new sequence. And we'll keep the existing settings. We might have to zoom out a bit later. Now, before we go any further, if you're enjoying this video, let me take just a minute and tell you about our fundraising video mini course. Now, this is a completely free email mini course that we made here at Deep Wells Media for nonprofits, churches, and ministries. So if you fall into that category and you are trying to either make a video for an event or the end of the year is coming up and you need a good fundraising video, I highly recommend that you check that out. The links will be below, and I would love to see you in the course. Now, let's get back to editing. And so now that I have my new sequence set up, I have my interview footage all sorted through, my main goal is to get the audio figured out first and lay all of that down before I even start assembling my video. So I'm going to go back to my music, and I'm going to drag on Not Yet the End, that song that we liked, and we're going to put it in. And so we see that now we have 2.5 minutes. That's a little bit too long. I was hoping for more of a 2-minute video. And so what you can do is you can just trim up your audio. So what I will do is I will go in and I will maybe, take off that first little bit of the beginning, because it's just a really long kind of ambient intro, and so that's not really needed information. I want it to pick up a little bit sooner. And then what you can do is go to your effects and type in constant power and just drag that on. And so we'll play it. Whoop. Okay, so then we have our audio going like that. And then I'll drag over to the end. And I'm going to have to cut out a little bit because I want it to end still a little bit sooner, because now we're down to 2:23, but I'd like to get a little closer to 2 minutes if I can. Okay, so I think now that we've got this cut here a little bit better, we've cut out a couple chords, and we are going to just clean up the end a little bit because we do have a little bit of a long tail, and 2:14, we can get a little bit better than that. So let's just cut it off a little bit, add another constant power to the end, and then let's just stretch it so that it fades out nicely over these last few seconds. And then now we're down to even 2:08. We could probably even go a little bit shorter. Okay, so now that we have our music where we want it, we're going to just assemble the rest of the audio. So first I'm going to probably drag this down a good bit, because music tracks usually come in a lot louder than you want them to, and if you want it to be background music, it needs to be quiet. So if you remember from earlier, we have these clips from the interview that we drug into this sequence, and so now we're just going to place them. So first, if we have our call to action, we're going to put that in. So if this was our call to action, I would drag it down a little bit so we can make room, and then I would put that even, towards the end right here, and then that way we know that that's where that needs to be. And then we're going to go through and find our other sound bites, and we're going to put them, as we think they work. So if we wanted to start off with this, we'd put it towards the beginning, and then we can kind of build in. It's like, what is he talking about? And we'll learn as we go through. So this is kind of where it comes into storytelling, and how do you want to tell the story of your video.
Jesus said he will build his church. And I think we just need to be sensitive to the spirit of where he's doing that and what he's doing in people's lives. My main philosophy isn't this great church planning strategy. It's mainly...
Yeah, so far I like this. And then, so for this video, I think we will just go on to the next step. So once we have our entire audio set up, so if we had, the right amount of audio for this video, so if we had this mostly filled up, maybe some good pauses for emphasis, because we don't want sound through the entire thing, or maybe you do, but typically when I make a video, I like to have a little bit of pause for emphasis, and sometimes to just kind of like let the video breathe a little bit, because if somebody's talking the entire time, it can get kind of monotonous and boring. But if we have little gaps, especially if the music swells up and creates this really dramatic emotional moment, so we can kind of punctuate something that the speaker says, and then we can move forward. So if we had all of this filled up, then what I would do is I would go into my footage again, and I would bring in the B-roll. So if we had a B-roll of this house, we might use this as an establishing shot, and then we would, we can assemble on top of the talking head footage, so it doesn't need to be shown, all of this, but it can be. So this is the beauty of it. So once we have all the talking head footage in and the audio, we have those linked, and so wherever somebody's talking, we could see their face, if it makes sense, or we can cover it up. So that's what's the beauty of editors like Premiere, is that we can stack up layers, so that way we can hear him talking, and we can, let's scale this down real quick, so we could hear him talking, and we could hear, and then we can see something.
Jesus said he will build his church.
Need to get this audio out. So we could hear him talking.
Jesus said he will build his church.
See a different.
And I think we just need to be sensitive.
So from here, we'll just keep adding in B-roll to fill up our sequence, because we already have our beginning and our ending set. And so we'll know that we need to see the person at some point when they're speaking, but then we don't have to show them the entire time, especially once you've already established, like, this is the person who's talking. You don't have to keep going and showing them every time they speak. So maybe what I would do is I would drag this clip over here, so like we can see him be introduced to this man as he talks, and then as we go forward, we hear his voice, but we remember that's who's speaking. We don't have to keep seeing him. So we can cover up the talking head footage, and then we can, if we unlink it from the audio, we can just drag it out to save a little bit of CPU power. And then similarly, we use the B-roll to fill in the gaps. So that's usually what I'll try to do first, is once we have our audio set up and we have all the talking head footage, then we know exactly how much B-roll we need, because we can't just have black video in between speaking parts. So we know we need to fill in those gaps, and then we can add on top of the talking head footage in case we need it, and if we have extra that we want to show. And that's what helps you fill out your story. And so once we have our whole video assembled the way we want it to, we're going to go into a process called color correction. And so the way I like to do it is I go into and I find an adjustment layer, and if you don't have one in your media library, you can just add a new one here, adjustment layer, hit OK, and then I'll drag it over all of my clips. So if I were to have this all of this filled out, I would drag it over all of them, if it was shot with the same camera. And so for my camera, what I like to do is I'll go over to color, and then I have what's called input LUTs, because my camera shoots in a log format, and so these are really helpful from the camera manufacturers to just kind of get you started with your color correction process. If you don't shoot in a log format, you don't necessarily need one of these. They can be helpful though. So what I'll usually do is use that to get a nice baseline, and then I'll go through each clip individually. So then I'll click off of the adjustment layer, and I'll click onto my clip, and then I will adjust each individual clip so that it looks a little more natural. So like if this looks a little too orange for me, I'll drag it over a little bit to the blue, and then I will keep going from there. And then I like to use these scopes, Lumetri scopes. If you don't see them, you can find them here, Lumetri scopes, and then right click. I have vector scope, YUV, parade RGB, and waveform Luma over here. Those are the ones I like to see. And so from here I can see my exposure values and some of my color values. So maybe it's a little too blue, so we'll just drag it a little bit back and kind of balance it out. And then we'll see that my exposure tops out at 90. I'd like to make it a wider dynamic range, so I'll bring up the whites, and then I will bring down the blacks so that we add a nice contrast, just until it's the way that I like it. And then maybe I'll add some vibrance and saturation, but I don't want to go too overboard with this type of video because I don't want it to look too crazy. And so then once I've done this with every clip, I'm pretty much done. You might go on to a process called color grading, which we might focus on in another video, but for most of these kinds of fundraising videos or nonprofit videos, those kinds of things, they don't really need a color grade. They mostly just need to be color corrected so that they look natural. We don't want anything to look unnatural or strange. We don't want it to be distracting. So mostly I'm looking for just a realistic look here. But But anyway, once you've color corrected, you are ready to hit export and get your video shared with the world. All right, that just about does it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you are new here, please subscribe and click the bell to be notified of all of our newest videos. We would love to connect with you, and we will see you in the next video.